Hey, we're Saints. Welcome to our crucifixion live stream. Glad to have you beautiful people with us. I'm Father Chris. That's Deacon Greg. We are coming to you with some great topics. Actually, it's a fascinating topic. Last week, Deacon Greg, we talked about PORN and all that kind of struggle and what it's leading to and the dangers of it and, misconstrued understandings of dating and marriage, which is what we're going to go after today. And we've heard out there that people have said that one of the reasons, there's gurus out there online who said that one of the reasons to get married is to overcome and conquer the virus of lust. So that kind of prompted all this kind of stuff. Before we get into all the fallacies of that kind of thinking and actually turn things into the right, proper, Orthodox Christian understanding of what marriage is and how we should be finding our spouse and then living once we are married, let's talk a little bit about what's going on out there.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think we've gone in our lifetimes. We've seen a lot of different ideas about dating being thrown out there and how to date and why to date. And we've seen speed dating and then dating apps and then eHarmony. They're going to fix you up perfectly.
Right.
And high-end matchmakers all over New York City that are going to, lead to things like the movie Hitch, where he eventually finds love, and it's beautiful. But the reality is the data is telling us that Gen Z is shying away from dating altogether.
Yeah.
There's actually a really fun book out there called Modern Romance by Aziz Ansari, and he has fabulous data in there as well.
Mm-hmm.
His data is older. This 2025 national survey of U.S. young adults found that about 1 in 3 reported actively dating, which means about 74% of women and 64% of men had not dated or had only dated a few dates in the past year. It's just something that people aren't doing anymore, which then they are trying to figure out, how are they going to get married? How are they going to find the right one? How are they going to do this? And what are they going to do? You throw that stuff out there like marriage is a cure for lust, and then others that say, you shouldn't date. You should just find your spouse. And we're a mess.
Yeah.
It's no wonder that 50% of marriages are ending in divorce.
Right.
Because people don't learn how to build connections. They don't have that practice. They don't go out there and do it. They're relying on an app to tell them that they're compatible with someone, and then they're limiting it to swiping right or left.
Yeah. I know there are even Facebook groups out there that are like stalking to see if one dude is dating more than one woman,
Oh, really?
And making it seem like it's a that if he, a person is out there trying to, find the right person, that somehow, I don't know, man. It's a scary thing because, dating is fun. We're going to get to that. Dating can be fun if done well. But basically, I think the struggle is the advice that the world has given us on dating. Casual dating, to be entertaining, obviously, with the idea, an emphasis only on the physical intimacy aspect of dating, and just do that as often and with as many people as you can, all that kind of stuff. The world's given us bad advice. And even worse is that when someone, because people recognize, their eyes open, they're like, this is crap. What the world is telling me is not working. Let me look for something better. And then they go out there and they find so-called pseudo-religious guruism out there that's telling them that the only reason for marriage is to overcome lust. And they buy into that, and then they get into a marriage and like, wait, what? Because lust does not go away in marriage, right? Like, I mean, just because you're married doesn't mean that you're legally allowed to, fornicate. Now you can conquer the monster of lust. Dude, as I said in the last episode, I hear a lot of confessions.
Yeah.
Lust does not go away after you're married. It's still there. So how do we get to a place where we, as men and women, particularly for our audience, warrior saints who are Orthodox Christians, or maybe not even yet Orthodox Christians, who are looking to find the answers to, should I date? How do I do it if I do want to? Should I get married? Who do I marry? How do I find him? How do I find her? How do I live and function once I am within the sacrament and the beautiful institution of marriage, right? So with all that bad stuff out there, let's just break it down, because we are we have specific, positions and takes on dating and marriage that I think are solid, grounded in Holy Scripture, grounded in the teachings of our faith, and that work. I mean, thank God, right? You and I both have great marriages. We have great women, so in spite of in spite of our shortcomings, they help lift us up. But let's start with you know, I don't know. I think it's just something that we often overlook is the idea that the foundation for getting married is or for doing it right and dating, the foundation has to begin with a growing, burgeoning, maturing personal faith.
Yeah.
Like, in other words, we need to be getting ourselves right first, right?
Yeah, you got to get it together if you're going to get out there and make something happen, because otherwise you're a mess. You get into a situation and the other person's a mess. It's all going to be a mess, and then you're going to have a divorce.
Right.
You got to get yourself together so that you can actually be in a place where you can be in a relationship and be healthy and be mature.
Right. Driving towards making yourself better.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I mean, let's just be honest. We're all a mess, and I understand that. And, but there are people who are content with their messiness,
Mhm.
and there are those who are not content and are fighting to become better men and women. They're waging a war within their own hearts and minds to become better men and women. And that's the approach. That's where you need to come at it from and realize you're not going to be perfect, right? Before I dated my bride, I dated other women. And I did a lot of it bad and I did a lot of it good. But, it was a constant desire to move forward. It wasn't just, I'm not going to just be content and wallow in the mire of mediocrity that so many other people are content to just sit in.
Yeah. It's huge. You have to want to grow, because if you don't, when you get into marriage and you're forced to grow, you're not going to keep growing.
Right.
And then you're not going to know how.
Right.
You're not going to know that you need that. You're not going to know how to do that process. And it's going to be so uncomfortable that you don't know how to grow, that you're just going to look for a way out.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't work.
Look.
But if you're going into it looking to grow, if you're working on your growth ahead of time, growing in your faith, focusing on that, and then you get into a marriage with someone who's also growing their faith, maturing in their faith, and looking to grow even further, now you're starting to grow together, and you're walking on a pathway with one another, and it's beautiful.
Right. Look, you're going forward, you're going backwards.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no stagnancy. And that's kind of the fallacy of, the American dream, just having a nice little house with a white picket fence and, 2.5 kids and so on. Not everyone becomes, the masters of the universe, right? But everyone has better be trying to become so. Obviously, God is the master of the universe, but they know what I mean when I say that. Like, you're either growing or you're falling backwards. There's no stagnancy. There's no mediocrity. And that's kind of the lie we've been sold. And therefore, if you are going to grow and get better, you got to have an eye on just becoming the best version of yourself, right? And I don't know, it's different for every person. You don't have to do it like I did or you do or he does. There are better people out there than us, many who are way better, but you got to be moving. And part of that, I think, comes within dating, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about dating now. Courtship, dating, it needs to be, with an eye on marriage. I agree, but I disagree.
Go further.
So I agree that we're, just to go out there with casual dating, that I'm just going to, I was invited to a wedding and I'm going to bring my plus one. I mean, those things happen and I get it, and that's okay. But the way that the world has put out the, just date casually a bunch of people has led to what we saw, what you just talked about, the 74% of women and 64% of men who are just like, I'm not dating at all.
Yeah.
Just not going to do it. It needs to be with an eye on marriage, meaning it's not just flippantly about sex. It's not just bringing my plus one so that I can show, other people, like get the family off my back because I don't have anyone and they're telling me to get married or whatever all those things may be. It's an eye on, I date another person with the intent that if God so wills, and this is the right person and I am the right person, that this could lead to marriage. Now, here's why I don't agree. Because not every person, and this is where the fallacy of this Orthodox guruism comes in, that you the first person you date, your high school sweetheart, you need to end up getting married. Well, let me tell you, that can be dangerous. It can work. I know I know of many situations where high school sweethearts and they're still married. But I also know, and as you said, 50% end in divorce. Because do we really know what the hell we're talking about and thinking when we're 18 years old, 19,
Right.
20, 22, even today? I mean, the 20-year-olds today have their own struggles. Like, we should be dating with a focus that I'm doing this in order to get married, but I don't have to just, like, how do I say it? You're going to make mistakes.
Right.
And you're going to do stupid things, and he's going to do stupid things, and she's going to do stupid things, and you're going to make mistakes. Or you may have chosen someone to go on a date with that is not marriage material for you, and you need to figure that out.
Yeah. Because then you can figure out what is marriage material
Right.
for you. You can make those mistakes and figure out what you're actually looking for. The process that you can have in dating appropriately, not flippantly,
Yeah.
casually, the way that people are talking about so often, you actually are able to hone in on who you are, what are the things that you're doing well, not doing great, but also what am I looking for? What do I actually need in a spouse? What are the things? And when I say what do I actually need in a spouse, I don't mean in the touchy-feely footprints in the sand kind of way. I mean in the sense of what qualities in another person will complement the qualities that I have so that I can actually grow. Where are the people that are going to challenge me?
Yeah.
Who are the people that are going to act like, what are the qualities that I need in a spouse? My wife and I were literally talking about this last night.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to grow. And one thing that we actually like about the other person is we don't let us get by with our usual BS,
Mm-hmm.
with the stuff that are our usual cop-outs. And when you get into this fallacious idea of dating is only for marriage and you have to marry the first, like, you never have that growth. You're never going to get
Yeah.
to that growth. You're just going to be stuck. I was dating a girl once and my parents did not like her. And my dad was telling me all about it. And if you're watching this, it's not you. But it was like they just didn't get involved though and tell me don't do it. And I said to my dad, why not? And he said, because I've seen enough situations in marital counseling where the parents got involved, broke someone up that they shouldn't, or forced a marriage that they shouldn't have, and the people are just miserable. And they're trying to
Yeah.
fix that afterwards.
Yeah.
And so you got to be clear
Yeah.
about why you're dating and that it's okay to grow.
Yeah. One of the words that you said in that whole segment was challenge.
Mm.
And I liked that the most of all of it. All of it was good, of course. But, someone's got to push you, challenge you to become a better man or a better woman. And if they're not, maybe you're not in the right place, right? Like, I mean, we're going to see later that marriage is ultimately a path to salvation. And to get to that point, you've got to have somebody who's willing to be, as you said about Diana, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And she's not going to let you float your normal, BS and so on. And, it's that push, is, we need it. I mean, that's the whole part of a community. I mean, the community of marriage. I mean, like, I need my bride to push me, we are facing in life, for example, like over the years, we have faced many challenges, in the world around us in which we live, in our community, in the work we do, raising kids, the craziness of the world, all this stuff. And I said to her once, to quote the Tupac, in his song Hail Mary, F the world if they can't adjust, right? I mean, like, it's us. I said, we ride together, and, as long as we are together, well, there's nothing we can't conquer with God's help. And the key part of that is that she's driving me, man.
Yeah.
I'm good because she's great.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even know if I'm good, but my point in saying that is that I'm not saying that I'm the awesomest guy in the world, but I'm saying whatever the heck I am, it's because that woman is amazing and is pushing me. And she didn't let me slide on it,
The way that keeps happening is because of the other problem that we often see with this idea that dating is only for marriage, is then somehow once we are married, we stop dating. And when you're married, you still got to go out on dates.
Yeah.
Not with other people, but with your spouse.
Yeah.
You still got to have the time. You've got to have that space for one another. You've got to make it when there's small people vying for your attention all the time. You've got to have those date nights so that you can get out there and have those conversations. Make the room to have those harder conversations or to have those longer conversations uninterrupted,
Yeah.
where you can challenge each other, where you can keep growing, where you can keep pushing each other, but also where you can just have fun and be goofy and laugh
Right.
and put the two breadsticks up your nose at one point and be like, I'm a walrus. Look
Yeah.
at me. Or maybe that's just me.
No. I'm a walrus. Beatles.
Cuckoo, cuckoo.
There you go. Bravo. You're absolutely right. But I think even before you get to that, you said something earlier about like your parents didn't like her, that girl you were dating. And that, we can't always defer to parents and their opinions, but it implies, the fact that you even brought that up implies something that we need, that, marriage is not something that is on an island either with two people. I mean, there's a community involved.
Yeah.
And we need to be wise enough to seek community, opinions. And I don't mean the entire community.
Yeah.
But at least to have a guide, a mentor, a parent, who can help show you what a healthy marriage looks like. Look, I'll tell you a true story. I, flirt with my wife in front of my children. They're adults now, my girls, but like all throughout their life, I'd grab her and give her a kiss and a hug and whatever. Ew, Baba, stop it. That kind of stuff. And not ever gross or inappropriate, but I love my wife and she's hot and I want to kiss her. It's their problem. They're in my house. They got to deal with it. And they would say, ew. And I said, look, don't you ever find yourself with someone who does not love you as much as you see me loving your mother, and vice versa. And that kind of mentorship, I mean, I wasn't trying to be gross, but I was trying to teach them what they should look for in the man they marry. And conversely, the kind of woman, their mother, showed them what kind of woman they should be within their own marriages.
Right.
So having that mentorship, an example, because, oh my God, you can watch your freaking TV or your cell phones and your Facebook and your Insta, and you can see all kinds of examples of what not to do in marriage.
Yeah. The other side of it is your family knows you better sometimes than you know yourself. And if you're blinded by other things going on in a relationship, sometimes they're providing you some valuable insight that you just aren't willing to admit to yourself yet. And relying on that guidance is hugely helpful.
Yeah.
They show you and they model for you what a good marriage looks like, hopefully.
Yeah.
And at the same time, they understand who you are. And sometimes they know what we need better. Just the way that, like, my mother used to know what I needed before I actually would say it often. And that I should not shirk that or ignore that when it comes to someone that I'm interested in or looking to maybe marry or whatever.
They raised you in a certain way, Deacon Greg, and you have certain values and a moral compass and an ethos in your mind that they gave to you. Now, I know that there are some people who were raised in homes that weren't given that. I understand it.
Mm-hmm.
But they're able to see, per the system that they put into your head, that you are dating someone who's going to align with that system or not, right? Like, and that leads to kind of a real quick ancillary conversation before we get into what you had mentioned about dating and marriage. Like, I always tell my couples as they're getting ready to get married, or at least if they're out there looking, write a list.
Yeah.
Write a list of things that are important to you and see if the other person checks some of those boxes, right? Like, now, I want to be clear about what I mean by that. There are certain things, values and morals that are important to me that are non-negotiable, right?
Mm.
So I'll use me personally just to put it in, I would not marry a woman who was not an Orthodox Christian. I very much wanted my wife to be Lebanese as I am. Not because Lebanese are better or worse, but because I always say it's crazy, right? The Lebs are crazy, but my wife is Lebanese. It's the same kind of crazy, right? But if she was not Lebanese, that would not have been a deal breaker if she had some of the higher qualities as well, i.e. the faith and the certain moral compass. So I always encourage people, look for the values and the faith and the morals that you have, because if those don't align, you're going to be at odds all the time, or a lot of the time at the very least. So when you're dating, I don't mean like have a notebook. All right, tell me what you think about check.
Yeah.
But you should be looking at that stuff.
And you should also be looking inward. What's your list of what you're bringing to the table?
Yeah.
Who are you? What are you offering? What are you bringing?
Yeah.
Because if the values that you're looking for are not values that you're also bringing to the table, then are they actually the values? Why are you looking for those values? I don't know.
Yeah,
Just something that popped as we were talking through that.
No, it's a thing.
Because you have to be able to work, and you have to be able to know where you're going. One of the things I ask couples to do in premarital counseling is write what their goals are for marriage.
Yeah, great.
And it gets really interesting when they haven't talked about it before. And this is the first time they're having that conversation, because they might not have been thinking that way.
Yeah.
But if you're writing the list of what you're looking for, you're writing the list of what you're bringing, then you're able to get there.
And look, that exercise that you do with them is fabulous, because both people are doing that.
Yeah.
And so you have to be aware too that, you are going to have to bring compromise of those values to create your own new value system. All right. So what I mean by that is the husband has been raised a certain way and the wife has been raised a certain way, and it can't always be his way or always her way, or it's not going to work. There has to be the willingness to take a little bit or some of both and bring them into one relationship where, some of the things that this new family unit does is a combination or a blend of the values that come from both. Like, I don't want my wife to come in and just totally submit to me in my way.
Exactly.
That's boring. Then I may as well just marry myself, which apparently you can do nowadays. Anyways, that's another whole.
That's a whole nother thing.
But like, I wanted some pushback on it, not in a fighting way, but in the let's think new, let's think creative. And she came from a good family, bro.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like, she's bringing good stuff to the table.
Yeah.
So there are some things that we do in our family, meaning Allie and I and our girls, that I brought. And there are some things that she brought. And then there are some things that we came up with together.
Yeah. So you used the word compromise. I actually, and it's semantics, and I get it. I don't like the word compromise because, and I tell the couples this, get rid of compromise, because compromise involves or implies that someone is winning and someone is losing. Someone has to give something up for compromise. But the way you just ended, instead, figure out what works for you as a couple. Figure out what you are going to do together. And you have to do that together so that you get out there and have a plan of attack. And that process has to start while you're dating. Well, my wife and I were still in the texting phase. We hadn't even started talking on the phone yet, because apparently there's a texting phase. We were arguing about something, and she was like, "I'm sorry, I don't mean to be arguing." And I said, "No, I think this is great. This is setting the foundation for how we will argue once we're married." And you have to be clear. You have to be intentional. You have to let everyone know in the process what you're hoping for in this process and how you're going to work through that, and how you're going to set that stage and lay that foundation so that as you go, you've got a game plan of what you're doing as a couple that works for you as a couple. That is how your family is going to do things, not just, well, this is how my family always did it, so I'm comfortable, so we have to do it that way, and blah, blah, blah.
Right. And that's why I say compromise. I know you don't like that word, but I mean, you do win in marriage and you do lose. And if you're not both willing to win and lose some, then, the compromise is the willingness to say, I know what you're saying, that, compromise, I'm always losing. Yeah, I'm not saying that. I'm saying you have to realize what's best.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's what you come with, and sometimes it's what she comes with, and sometimes it's you guys together creating some new stuff.
And as long as you're not keeping score in the process, then it doesn't matter.
Totally. Yeah, totally. For sure. And I mean, it alludes to what you just said, that like, this is a team effort.
Yep.
My wife and I are, a team. I know that sounds silly to say it like that, but it is. I mean, we're trying to figure out life and go through it together and raise kids together. And there's no manual for that, for God's sakes. I know there's a bunch of books, we read them, but there's no real manual, outside of the scriptures. I think really what that compromise is all about is really more well stated as living a crucifixional life. And you do that within marriage. This is why marriage is, it's about the sacrifice. I mean, tell us, Deacon Greg, I mean, we've got it in there, St. Paul gives it to us, right? And this is, so what Deacon Greg's going to read here for us in just a moment is is from St. Paul's epistle to the Ephesians. And for those who are Orthodox Christians, and maybe even those who are not, but for Orthodox Christians, we read this actual text in the sacrament of marriage. So when we marry someone in the church, this is what we hear in one of the, in the epistle section, the part of the readings.
Yeah. So he starts in chapter 5, verse 21, be subject to one another out of reverence for Christ. And people get upset about this word. They think that it's subjugation and somehow you're under someone else's thumb. And then it goes on in verses 22 to 24, wives, be subject to your husbands as to the Lord, for the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church. His body is himself, and is himself its Savior. As the church is subject to Christ, so let wives also be subject in everything to their husbands. And people get worked up over this because they hear that word subject and they think somehow that means that one is ruling over the other. But the reason I read 5:21 first is it says be subject to one another.
Mm-hmm.
That word, I mean, you talk about this far better than I, in Greek is ipotasome. It's an understanding of military order.
Yep.
It's a military taxonomy that brings people together, that talks just about who's doing what.
Yeah.
And it's a functional word
Yeah.
that shows us how we're actually going to work things out. And the key is you have to be subject to one another.
Right.
It's not just one being subject to the other, which is why the goal, as you just said, has to be crucifixional living. And then he follows that up with, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself for her.
Mm-hmm.
That's the man's subjection. He has to give himself. He has to be prepared to die. He has to die to self.
Yeah.
And he has to be crucifixional the same way the wife has to be crucifixional. You say it a lot at marriages, and it's fascinating and beautiful the way that you instruct the couples and tell them that there is no longer only them. It has to be the other.
Mm-hmm.
And you talk about this beautifully in understanding how we're called to live crucifixionally. Because if we don't live crucifixionally, we're living selfishly. And if we're there living selfishly, then we're never going to actually be able to be subject to one another. And we're never going to actually be able to learn what it means to be marriage. And then we're never going to actually be on that path of salvation that you're talking about.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's it. Enough said. Drop the mic. I mean, it's the modus operandi for marriage is the same MO for life. It is crucifixional living, which is to emulate our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And the simple statement of what does that mean to be crucifixional? It is the daily sacrifice of my will for the sake of doing God's will, which is to love the other. I must surrender to his will, obey his will, which is manifest in sacrifice for the other. That's exactly what Paul is saying. Die to one another. Die to yourself, for one another. And if we do that within marriage, it works and it's great. It's not always perfect because nothing but God is, but it works and it's great and it's fun and it's awesome and it's romantic and it's, successful and it's, filled with joy and laughter and, all of the good things that go. You have to, and that's, I think, the fallacy of that. What we started earlier with is the voice of culture today is telling us, go get yours. And how does she serve me and how does he serve me? And as opposed to how do I die for the other? Right. But if we can approach, and this is why we say it's the path to salvation. So Adam went in the garden to death. Jesus Christ went through death, and he did it on the cross. And the result of Adam's misdeed was cast from the garden and death. Christ's result from the cross is an empty tomb. And so that's the MO of life. That's what it means to be crucifixional. And that's the choice. And in your marriages out there, beautiful people, you can be Adam or you can be Christ.
Yeah.
Now, the Christ way is not always fun because there's that funky word, sacrifice, and it's particularly self-sacrifice.
Yeah.
But man, it ends in an empty tomb, which is what we're all chasing. And that's why marriage is the path to salvation. It is you wake next to and lie down at the end of the day next to the first other that you're supposed to sacrifice for. And so, all the way through the rest of the day, it's daily, man, all the way through the rest of the day. How do you sacrifice for the other person? I mean, that's what Christ has called us to. Well, you get an opportunity to practice that all day with at least one person, if you're married, meaning the spouse.
Marriage becomes the lab for you to work out what it looks like to be crucifixional, right? Just like in chem, you have your I'm told, I didn't take chemistry, but you have your chemistry class, and then you have your chem lab where you practice the things that you learned in chemistry.
Right.
Marriage becomes the lab for crucifixional living. It becomes the lab for you to learn how to actually focus on another person. Dating becomes a place where you're able to, with that eye towards marriage, dating becomes a place to figure out what that might actually look like in easier ways than when you're all of a sudden married and the rubber's hitting the road in a way that is much more real, much more heavy sometimes, and definitely much more permanent.
Yeah. So let's throw some practicals with that crucifixional mindset as the way we live through marriage or deal with marriage. Let's throw some practicals out there for people, because I know we always ask, okay, fine, I get it. Follow Jesus, not Adam. How do I do it? What are some specifics? And let's talk about dating. Let's talk about sex. Let's talk about, growing together as a couple. Our team put the word spiritual growth in there, how to fight properly, just a few examples. Let's talk first about,
excuse me,
about dating. And like I said once, you've heard this before. Someone invited me to their home for dinner. I said, on a specific night, I said, thank you so much. I have a date. And they looked at me. They're like, Abuna, you can't date, right? I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, you're married. I'm like, well, who do you think my date's with? And I think but they weren't being rotten, but I think it threw them, because that's not a normal way that people speak about, marriage.
Yeah.
And we're trying to say, to reframe that mindset. Like, look, you date before you get married in order to learn about yourself and then to find the right person, but it doesn't end there.
Yeah. It does not.
No.
And you have to start, to that same point, teaching your kids young that is an important part of marriage. So my daughter will say to me, if my wife and I are about to go out to do something, she'll say, are you guys going on a date night and then we'll have a babysitter? And I'll tell her, yeah, Baba, we're going out on a date. Oh, what are you going to do on the date? And we'll talk about what we're going to do on the date and how we're going to go to dinner, and we're going to talk, or we're going to go do something fun, or, whatever we're doing. But she's got in her mind
great.
From now that married couples still date. And it's fun.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, the attentiveness, just the conversation. And it's hard where you are is a little bit harder in some sense than where I am. And by that, I mean, like, you still have small people at home. Both of mine are gone, conquering the world on their own. So there is, more time that they need, that your beautifuls need, and I understand that. But like at this point we're out, when we don't go out to eat too often, but we kind of date at home too. I mean, we've been very deliberate with the empty nester syndrome. We still sit at the table. We light candles. We play music in the background, a glass of wine, nice dinner, and we sit there for hours.
Yeah.
Sometimes. So that, and we've been deliberate about that, intentional, so that we don't eat at the bar, standing at the countertop bar, or eating at, watching TV, so that there is still some dating going on. And let me tell you, this how's a transition, and I don't want to be inappropriate, but, our sex life has not changed. Maybe it has, but for the better, right? Because we have more time, obviously. And I say that not to be gross or crass, and she's probably going to throw a shoe at me if she watches this to know that I said that. But I transition into that next topic. Sex within marriage is not simply a legal checklist, or it becomes legal because now we're married, right? That I'm going to somehow overcome lust with that. That's what started this whole series in the first place. Was some clown out there said that, it helps you overcome the virus of lust. I mean, first of all, no, it doesn't. Lust doesn't just go away because you're married. But that exposes the mentality there, right? That, lust is a bad thing. Agreed. And that temptation, sin of lust seems to be assuaged by sex. But you're not supposed to do that before you're married. So get married, and then you can have sex, and then lust will go away.
That's the ostrich head in the sand approach to dealing with the passions, where that's really not what we do in the Orthodox
Yeah,
Church. We
totally.
go out and we fight our passions.
Yeah.
We go out and we try to deal with things, not just find a legalistic way
Right.
around things.
Right. And I'm not being disparaging to that person. It's hard because, forgive me, people, but that's a Protestant legalistic mentality.
Yep.
And they are Protestants and they come into the church and they can't not bring that with them, right? It's in their head and they may wear different costumes, but that's hard to get that out of the head. And I get that. But the proper understanding is that, the intimacy with a marriage is partly about, fighting the passions, because you can do that in a beautiful way, but that's not its function. It is about bringing two people together in a way that is beautiful and fun and, rewarding. And I don't say those words crassly, at all. I mean, it's when we are intimate with our spouse, we are completely naked with another person.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't just mean that, in the obvious sense of clothing. I mean, we are exposing the true depths of who we are with another person. And I mean, why would you want that to be cheapened by this legalistic, now I'm allowed to mentality?
Yeah.
Right. It's a beautiful moment, right? It's not just also, now my mind is racing, just about procreation, though that's certainly part of it, because everybody knows that to make one person, you need two persons, to do, so it is partly about that, but that's a beautiful blessing that comes from it. But it's not, again, the reason why we get married.
Yeah. Good.
I don't know if you wanted to add to my tirade there.
No, I want to jump on board. It's the thing that brings you together the way that it only can, which is why it's so intimately linked, if you will, to something you said earlier about how to fight, right?
Yeah.
And often after a fight, there is the coming back together as a couple. But I want to talk about how we actually fight in marriage, because we have to be very deliberate, not to be cheesy in our word choice, that we avoid certain things. Because something most people don't realize is if you fight in marriage the same way you fight on Facebook, you are automatically going to lose.
Yeah, for sure.
Because you do not want to trap or block your partner. You don't want to box them into a corner with some sort of legal argument that you're trying to win when you're in an argument with your spouse, because doing that means that you've never won. The minute you think to yourself, I got him, is the very moment that you lost so much more than this petty argument that you're having.
Right.
And then you need to get to the actual root of what's actually going on, because often the things we fight about in marriage are not the things that we're actually fighting about.
Mm-hmm.
And they're about these silly things that aren't actually addressing the real core issues, and then they're just going to keep coming up. So we got to find ways to get through that so that we can fight well, so that we can have a good life and actually be crucifixional. And that means that if we're going to fight crucifixionally, we have to be willing to admit when we're wrong.
Yeah.
We have to be willing to admit. Like, I know one guy bought his wife a notebook that said, "These are all the times my husband was right." I was the man.
Yeah.
But like, that's the mentality. Like, I bought it for her jokingly, but that's the mentality that we enter into things with, right? That we're going to show them that we're right and why they're wrong. And in doing that, we all lose.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a natural thing,
Yeah.
In the biology, the DNA of people is to preserve self. I mean, so if I'm wrong, if they're right, then I must be wrong and I have to preserve me.
Yep.
So, I mean, that's the struggle that, we found with Adam versus Christ. I mean, it's the destruction of self in order to do God's will, which elevates and leads to the empty too. In the fights with, and arguments that we have within marriage, it's, we both know a person that often talked about putting her in the penalty box.
Yeah.
Using the hockey metaphor, right? Like, I'm not going to talk, and you become two ships passing in the night in the house.
Yeah. And then sex becomes a weapon in that war, in that penalty, in that fight. And that sorry, it just morphs and warps what something that is beautiful is actually supposed to be.
Right. Yeah, totally. The root of it all is in marriage as well as in life. When we are at odds with another person, we have the responsibility, the duty to make peace. Jesus tells us in the Gospel of Matthew chapter 5, which is the Sermon on the Mount, that if you're going to make your offering to the Lord, you're going to bring your gift to the altar, and there you realize that your brother has something against you, drop your gift right there, baby. Go back and make peace, and then come make your offering. And, it's a commandment. I mean, Matthew 5, 6, 7 is the new law, which is why Jesus is seen as the new Moses in Matthew. I mean, he's the Lord who is bringing Moses got the commandments from the Lord and gave them to the people. Now the Lord comes and sits down and gives them straight, right? And he says, go make peace. And that doesn't always mean that in peacemaking that we still like our spouse at that moment. It's okay to not like them for a few moments, right?
Yeah.
But we have to make peace. And we have to be man enough and woman enough to say, I'm sorry, right? Now, I found a formula, and I don't remember where I read it, but it was called, whatever, the power apology. I did this. It must have made you feel like that. I shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry. And it's pretty simple. Look, I said these words or did this action. It made you feel a certain way. I shouldn't have done that. I apologize.
Yeah.
It can be that simple. We just have that responsibility. I mean, he said, hey, my people, go make peace.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. When I talk about conflict resolution, I talk about it through the lens of you have to seek, but also be willing to grant forgiveness.
Yeah.
You have to be able to say, not only I'm sorry, not only I did this, I'm sorry that you felt this certain way. Because if you don't do those two pieces, you can't actually get to the heart of the matter, right? You can't actually figure out what was really being said, why it was being said. But then you have to be willing to seek and grant forgiveness. You can't continue to hold it on. Goes back to the scorekeeping that I was talking about earlier. You can't hold on to this stuff, right? You can't say, well, I did this for you, and therefore you now have to do this for me. And, well, you won this fight, and I conceded that thing at this point, and that blah, blah, blah. And now, therefore, you have to go out and you have to do this other thing that I want you to do now that you don't really want to do. Like, then you're making a mess. You're cheapening your marriage, and you're limiting it to a transactional relationship rather than allowing it to be truly a crucifixional one.
Yeah. Or as you say, transformational.
Yeah.
Yeah, you draw that distinction nicely between a transactional versus transformational relationship. And it's supposed to be, as you say, transformational, not just transactional. Yeah. Fighting is it's something that we all do. And I mean, the whole world is, filled with fighting and, just argument and hate and all that stuff. We've got to fight, to overcome that stuff. How about we end with this one, growing together in the gospel of Jesus Christ as a couple. And some things just pop into my mind. Communication talking is certainly one of them. Going to church together is one of them. I'll tell you this, this. We were in Paris over the Christmas break, picking up my oldest from her semester abroad, and we flew home on Christmas Eve, and our plane was delayed. And so I got to church to serve Christmas Eve liturgy, and I was late because my plane was late. And so you guys had it, our pastoral team and, our clergy served. And so I'm like, I'm going to go sit with my wife. And it's like the first time I've sat with my wife, like maybe ever, maybe 3 times in our marriage, because I'm the priest and I have to do the services. And I was sitting there with my bride and my girls, and I was like, oh, this is beautiful.
Yeah.
I don't get to do that very often. And I'm not complaining about it, but you and I are clergy. We serve the services. But what a cool thing to be in church together with my family. And we did that whole pinky holding thing on the pew. Like, we were holding hands by pinkies, It was beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, I was happy. I mean, it just made me happy to be with my family in church. Worshiping God together, sitting in the same row, praying to the one true God together. Another thing that we often teach is that families, but especially starts with husband and wife, should be praying together at home too.
Yeah.
And that may seem awkward because prayer seems like it should be personal and private, and it can be, but it's okay to pray together as a husband and a wife.
Yeah.
I don't know what else, DG. I mean, as we're growing together, what, I mean,
Reading scripture together,
yeah,
talking through it,
yeah,
finding a podcast. I'll make the pitch. Get UTB, Understanding the Bible series, and look through those videos, watch those videos,
yeah,
read a chapter, watch a video together, and it's a great way to culminate things.
yeah,
We're in the first week of Lent right now, and we just started our Lenten reading challenge.
yeah,
Utilize that. Take that as an opportunity. Get
yeah,
the emails where every day you're going to get the biblical readings for that day sent to you, and it's an opportunity for you to read through what scripture and what the church has designed for us to help us along the way during the
right,
Lenten season as a couple,
yeah,
so that you're continuing to go through that
yeah.
further and further together.
I love it. How about we end with this? One final practical is to ask difficult questions and answer them together.
Mm.
I've said this a million times on our live stream is, the table is sacred in my home. And so we didn't just sit with the kids and we're like, how was school? I mean, we asked tough questions, not to be rotten, but just as an exercise. And so maybe even our listeners could do this week, is to ask themselves, what is one thing I can do this week to help strengthen my relationship with my boyfriend, girlfriend, significant other, spouse, whatever we say, wherever we are in life. We would ask, I did this with the girls too, and Allie and I, like, what are 3 wins for the day? What are 3 losses for the day? What are you working on? What are you trying to get better at? Just questions that are not like, how was work?
Yeah.
To spend time and ask those, deeper thought provoking questions. And maybe we give as a gift, as a gift to our audience, start this week with what's one thing I can do to make a significant change for the better in my marriage or in my relationship with my significant other. Asking those kinds of questions have always been so beneficial to me. So I share it with you just as like it works. So give it a shot. And maybe if you are interested in some of those questions, send us an email. You can find at warriorsaints.org ways to contact us. We have a list. I'm compiling a list. I'm at 58 now. So I have 58 of those great starter questions, and I'm happy to share them. Maybe if you help me think of it, we can put those resources out there, but I won't remember. So that's why we have the smart people. But if you're interested in it and you want it, send an email. We'll give you the list for sure. Those questions are fun. It's a fun thing to do. Anyways, I appreciated this. Was a good one. I mean, marriage is a beautiful thing. It's a sacrament, we call it. It's from God. It's not just this legal binding contract that enables you to be intimate or share, bank accounts. It's much, much more than that. And so it was a good combo. So love it. We'll be back again next week with more. I think we're going to continue this topic, right? I don't know. She said it's the last one. Who knows? What's that? Yeah, that's fair. Maybe smarter people. If you want us to keep going on the marriage relationship topic, comment, say it. I mean, tell me, give us ideas. We're up for it. Anyways, love you, beautiful people. We'll be back Sunday. Orthodox Liturgy, 9 and 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, respectively. And then we'll see you again next week, as always. Keep walking on the way of the warrior saint.